My name is Billy. I'm a writer and a digital strategist, and this is my channel. Have you ever thought about what it takes to succeed in business, life, health, or relationships? After so many videos, I like to choose one that I designed strictly for the benefit of myself and anybody else who may share some of these same questions. Now, the things I go on about, they can vary, but mostly they have to do with whatever concepts I've been spinning around in the ethers of my own mind. Today, I hit a riff about proven principles that success is built on, and a little bit about how it formed what I call the EverFlow method. Now, if I start to wander a little bit, I'm going to apologize in advance. But if you stick with me, then you'll gain an understanding of what it means to have a successful business that is built on a strong foundation. And maybe you'll glean a little bit of insight in how some of these principles also guide us to having successful lives. Now, I'll tell you, these are foundational. If you are a developer, the size of the building that you intend to build will dictate just how deep and wide the foundation is that you've got to create first in order to be able to build it. So pay attention. You literally have everything to gain and nothing to lose by what I'm going to share with you today. Now, Everflow is an offshoot of what I had always thought about as far as evergreen principles. These are proven principles that have worked in the past, they work today, and they'll likely work in the future. They are evergreen because the principle is built on a certain undeniable truth that can withstand the test of time. I've always been interested in things that last, like pyramids of Egypt or the Parthenon in Greece or the Colosseum in Rome. There were structures whose engineering outlived the empires that created them. Now, in the same way, certain principles lead to long lasting durability. Now, if you eat and exercise, you'll likely be rewarded with great health. If you save and invest steadily over time, you'll likely be financially independent one day. If you practice the skill every day over long periods of time, even if you don't intend to improve, then you'll likely become world class at it just through the sheer repetition. And if you try to improve just a little bit at a time, you'll likely master it completely. Now, it's important to focus on important things of real substance, not just cosmetics. I think in society today that we go to Instagram or we go to any social media and we see the big houses and the jet airplanes and the far off exotic vacation spots. And hey, there is nothing wrong with that, but that's really very surface level stuff. Some people put on fronts without having developed the grit or the tenacity that really takes to be able to achieve those kind of things. Your 401k, your house, your cars, your designer clothes, your jewelry, all of that stuff can be replaced in the grand scheme of things. This is the idealized version that I was mentioning, and it's a combination of traits, character skills, and self mastery in key areas that you aspire for. Now, in order to attain this idealized state, you have to take an inventory of where you think you are now and the resources at your disposal. This is where most people get confused and drop off. Now, this could be hard because a lot of people will have a scarcity mindset or they'll have very limited beliefs. And the reason why it happens is most people don't know how to be self reflective in a modern society. It's been my observation that most individuals live life in reactive mode instead of living life intentionally and blocking out the noise of everyday life. They have grown uncomfortable with their own thoughts and feelings. This is one practice of gratitude. Again, in my opinion and in my own observation, is so critical because people have been homeless or they have been destitute or they have lived lives with parents that were addicted to drugs or in abusive relationships or had horrible things done to them when they were younger that they had no control or power to avoid or be able to defend themselves. And sometimes they're carrying around deep trauma, but instinctively they have had the faith in their ability and in the hope that they can make a greater life for themselves. And Many have gone on to do just like that. Rather than listen in on the negative self-talk or for lack of a better word, the demons in the back of their thoughts, the things that are holding them down. They're listening to the quiet, still voice that just kind of emanates from their own heart, their own soul. And they are able to put one foot in front of the other and be grateful that they may have a healthy body or that they were able to survive for 1 hour, 12 hours, a day, a week. And because of that, they're not limiting themselves and letting their hearts harden to resentment over their current state, but have maintained the belief in themselves that they can change their circumstances. So, what I guess I'm trying to say is that sometimes when people talk about hitting bottom, it's because they are able to experience solitude if they allow themselves to be and experience solitude is a great gift that helps them regain the awareness of themselves again. In the beginning, if you've been moving through life unconsciously, the awareness of your true state of being has been disconnected. Most people are just on automatic pilot. This is not so much their fault, but they've allowed themselves to be ingrained in day to day life without really having the intention to have much effect on it. And more than that, have an effect on it over long periods of time. It's the proverbial small drop of water that falls on a boulder over great lengths of time that eventually just erode the boulder away. That can work for you or that can work against you. If you allow it to work against you, you will look at every obstacle in your life or every stumble or every failure is the final vote on what you're able to accomplish for yourself. But by going the other way about it and start looking for the small, almost imperceptible gains that you're able to make at whatever you're setting out to do, then you're not even able to get out of the start out gate, is what I'm trying to say. Don't do that. Now, I would say that I spend time in solitude quite a bit. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to explain. There was a book I read a long time ago by a guy named Brian Tracy. Now, he's a much older man, but he's still very active. And he was in the sales training space as well as the personal development space. And he had wrote a book a long time ago. I bought it off the bookstore, I think back at Walden Books when Walden Books was still around before it went bust. And the book had a section in it where he talked about spending an hour a day in deep thought. By doing it, you are able to activate what he called the superconscious brain, that you would sit there almost in pain and dwell on a certain subject or looking for an answer to a problem that was critical to where you were in life. And if you spent time doing that, he believed that you would be able to incubate that question about how to resolve it. And then the answer would come to you either through synchronicitous events. I think that's how you say that. That's just basically random chance. It seems like almost like a small miracle because it's so random, but it seems tailored to you. Or it would pop out of your subconscious and you would have an answer to be able to act on. So in these moments where you spend time with yourself, you develop awareness and you start developing the metacognition to be aware of your own thoughts. If you've ever sat alone somewhere and just spent some time wondering or watching your thoughts without putting any kind of meaning, it's a little tough at times because we have tens of thousands of thoughts a day, most of which you're just repeating yourself day to day. But having the chance to be able to catch yourself in real time allows you to be able to redirect that current, that river current of thoughts, and move it into the direction of your goals. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be an overnight success. I kind of hate those stories because if you listen to those stories, you almost feel like you're doing something wrong. And here we go. As businessmen and marketers, of course, we want to market and put that out there because we want people to get excited about what's possible. And those things are possible. But I don't think that they are realistic. I think that you have to put in a certain amount of reps. I think there's a certain amount of skill, experience, and knowledge that you have to gain along the way. And it just takes a certain amount of consistent action day by day while allowing yourself to have belief that you can change your circumstances. Now, I'm sorry if I warned you in the beginning, I was going to possibly wander a little bit. Excuse me. And I'm not trying to get whoa, whoa here, but awareness and self reflection can help you get in touch with parts of yourself that you've either stuffed down or are humming in the background of your own mind, like white noise. Being unaware of these thoughts, emotions, and hidden biases can negatively impact your goals. Awareness is the first key to taking charge of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, and to make sure that they align to pursue in the pursuit of a worthy goal. The other thing I've thought about a lot is the work once mentality, and this goes to systems thinking. Sometimes some things can't be systematized, but you can develop a standard operating procedure or a checklist, something to refer to cut down on the start and stop motion of a particular task. But other times, through now artificial intelligence and automation and all the gift of technology, and you can systematize a lot of things. Now, I've mentioned it's my intention to build a business that performs daily with as little of my input as possible. For me, it means that I have to educate myself on what I need to do to make that possible. Now, to help, I use a combination of market research, data, skills, automation, and delegation where needed. All of those things I'm going to be documenting in videos on this channel, not only just to help the market that is hungry for that kind of information. As I said in the very beginning, I want this to act as a library of my own experience, skills, and knowledge for my own family, for my own kids. I've got a young son that's wanting to build a business on his own, and I know a lot. I've spent a lot of time in business, over 30 years, 20 years of it in banking. I understand lending, I understand finance, I understand P&L sheets, marketing, lead generation, front end, back end, you name it. But this keeps me at the high end of the market and the new developments that come out. And it's where I can also, in addition to being able to catalog it, is observe the big picture and make decisions on the directions from that view. Now, to help, there are certain tools I use along the way, all of which are free, but it is again mindset. So let me wander off the reservation a little bit now too. When you are starting out, if you have very few resources or no resources, I mentioned some people that had really stark circumstances in the beginning. You are your greatest asset. And I would encourage you to really take a look at improving your health, taking preventive medicine, cleaning up in your nutrition, and doing things that are going to help you live in a peak state as much as possible. That includes exercise. The benefits of exercise are almost too many to too numerous for me to mention here, but I guarantee you, if pharmaceutical companies could figure out a way to put all of those benefits in a pill, we're talking about multi-trillion dollar businesses. It would be phenomenal. And it's free for you as an individual. So take advantage of that. But the first tool I want to mention is called the Pareto principle. Now, it's also been loosely referred to as the iron law of Matthew or the Matthew effect in the Bible, but it's commonly known as the 80-20. Now, this thinking model was discovered by an Italian economist who had observed in real life that 80% of the buildings were owned by 20% of the landlords, 20% of restaurant menus items were accounted for 80% of the revenue or the ordering. The business's top sales performance came from roughly 20% of its top salespeople who generated almost 80% of the business's revenue. Now, in manufacturing, 20% of the incorrect inputs resulted in 80% of corrupted outputs. If you are using AI, you know that the quality of the prompts that you use, often in succession, when you stack them to refine it, are going to end up generating the highest quality outputs. So think about that and think about this mental model when you're applying that. Now, to go on and in business, using 80-20 thinking, you determine which products are worth keeping and the rest, which should just be retired. Some products, clients are time sensitive and they throw off your ROI. You have to ask which segment of your customers are your biggest spenders, and they just love your business and you. They love your brand so that you can devote more time to them as well as finding more customers like them. This kind of bleeds into the next one, which is thinking about the back end part of the business. A lot of people focus on the front end. When the internet first came out, people were talking about ebooks and it was the greatest thing. There was always a new, seemed like $77 ebook that was being launched on clickbait back in the day. And nobody knew really anything about upsells. Nobody knew anything. Google clicks were cheap. It was just a different time. But as the markets became more sophisticated, those who were able to understand and implement back end banking in the business were able to be the ones that survived and made more money. There's a lot of gurus that were around 15, 20 years ago that are not around anymore. And no, they didn't all just make a bunch of money and retire. They mainly made a lot of money and then they had to retire because they just couldn't keep up. But that's a subject for another day. For now, be willing to take a smaller paycheck up front to make a bigger payout on the back end. Now, that quote came from a guy named 50 Cent, like Curtis Jackson. He wrote a book called Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter. I liked the book so much, I got it for my son. But the big takeaway that I got from Curtis was that in business, when he was pitching his Power series to the cable networks, he was willing to get a development deal and get it in motion and take a smaller paycheck in the beginning in order to be able to make a bigger paycheck on the back end. So when you get into TV production, when you have a hit series, the streaming company or the cable company or the studio or TV, wherever, they will often commit to paying all of your production costs. And then that includes the star's payroll, that includes your cameras, your crews, everything. You get a producer's fee, there's a director's fee. You get, excuse me, oh, sorry, it's allergy season. But they're willing to do that and then tack a 10 or a 15% profit on top of it. So you have profit built into the equation right off the hand. However, he was thinking beyond that and developing several seasons of it and then eventually spinoffs, which is what he did. So he was willing to take a smaller deal on the front because he had planned on making a bigger deal on the back end. And I want you to keep that in mind. Back end sales are going to be the core to your profits. The front end offer is typically the handshake. You're introducing the client to your world and you're inviting them further into your home. Now, through content engagement, you create rapport. Once you have that established, you can further your authority and your expertise as you take them down the customer's journey. Now, your content should be what I call engine market, your customers. You're educating them on things that they don't know what they don't know by making them aware of them, then introducing your back-end offer. If you've ever undertaken a hobby and then started down a path and started wondering if you knew what you were doing or if you were going to get results, often it's because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what problems you're going to encounter. You don't know that there are tools or methods that you could incorporate that would help you achieve your goals faster and even in greater effect. But again, this is the you don't know what you don't know principle that I talk about so much. So in the back end offer, that allows you to really deliver value at a premium and it makes a positive impact on your business's economics. The hardest thing to do is to gain a new customer, but the easiest way to lose them is to not take care of them on the back end. Now, the next thing I want to talk about are data-driven decisions. Often in the beginning, entrepreneurs, business people, and if you're pursuing any kind of endeavor, you are often shooting from the hip. We've all heard the legendary stories and myths about the great business leaders who made decisions off the hip or in the spur of the moment and made a gazillion dollars. There's a lot of romanticism about business and success. That's why the business leadership market is a multi-billion dollar market and why CEOs who write books do so well. People are indoctrinated a lot by society movies, entertainment, music, that business success is this combination of inspiration and madness. Popular culture will focus on Steve Jobs' emotional instability and abrasive nature as the traits responsible for being a visionary. It's easy to get confused in this without just realizing that while he was a visionary, but personally, he was really kind of an asshole too. Not much is mentioned about Steve Wozniak, who had more to do with Apple's engineering and success than Jobs did. Sure, Jobs was a great presenter and a leader, insofar as his ability to drive his employees to the limit with little regard for their welfare. And it makes a much better story by creating myths around his behavior and all the drama that flowed from it. After all, let's face it, myths, drama, it all is great marketing and it's all great selling. It drives sales. But truthfully, business success is more the result of consistent action and focus. But what action to take and what to focus on? Now, that's when it comes back to the numbers, data. It's not sexy. In fact, it's boring. But basing your decisions on the data created and available is usually the smart way to bet. Now, I'm not here to tell you that you can't make a quick decision every once in a while and end up actually okay. And if you're the kind of person that wants to bet everything on black and then run, I want you to know, yeah, there is a chance, at least 50-50, it's going to land. But I can tell you at the same time, you could run around in a dynamite factory with a lighted match and survive, but still, you're an idiot for having done it. Be smarter than that. I had 20 years in banking, and the first thing I learned when I was made an officer of a bank was that it was my job to mitigate risk. It was my job to take a second look at checks or deposits or activity that was questionable in accounts. To take a look at the lender's collateral, make sure it was as solid as what it needed to, because that was my job. It was to mitigate risk to the bank while still providing great service to the customers. So listen, again, basing your decisions on data may be boring, but it's usually the smart way to bet. Think of it as a chess match. You can learn all the tactics and all the strategies, but winning is about looking for patterns on the board and studying your opponent. And in business, the opponent is the market itself. Do you want to compete in a market that has a lot of money and demand with a willingness to take action on your offer? Or do you want to compete in a market with little money and low demand and unwilling to act on your offer? Obviously, there are key performance indicators, KPIs, that will allow you to know where you stand in relation to your goals. By knowing them well and tracking them closely, you make decisions in real time instead of shooting from a hip. Now, consistent effort. I've talked a little bit about this. It's better to make a little bit of progress each day in the form of daily action instead of swinging for the fences. Small moves build the foundation for bigger moves later on. I think this is important for everyone, but especially for beginners. When people plunge into business, there is all this urgency to be successful from the get go and get the money flowing. And believe me, I get it. Everyone in business does this. But with that sense of urgency, it is better to temper it with patience for the inevitable learning curves that come along the way. There are lots of skills that one takes up in learning for business: sales tracking, strategy, sales calls, analytics, data gathering, etc. And it can seem overwhelming. Now, this can make people quit before they ever really try. To avoid that, it's critical to take up notes, create systems, generate SOPs, and tweak them as time goes on. As you gain experience, this reduces the drag on your decisions, your energy, and it makes you more productive. The effort needed is not just about growing your skill level, but also about reducing the factors that create friction in your business process. Using the 80/20 model and data driven decision, you act as an engineer and look for spots in your business that you can better leverage. The turning point is running a business is not all about action with high urgency, but time invested in thinking deeply about your business and how to improve. Otherwise, you create a job for yourself where you're running on a treadmill. You expend a lot of energy to just end up in the same place. Back in thinking and billing. I want to return a little bit to talk about the back end thinking in business. Now, we talked about back end profit pipelines, but I want to talk about actually thinking about the back end. Emphasis on the sales cycle usually focuses on the beginning of the sales cycle. There's nothing wrong about this, but what happens when the sale is completed? If you don't know or have a small idea, this is where you should spend a lot of your time. Once the sale is made, you need a strategy for cultivating a closer relationship with that customer. Then have a pathway created to take them down in order to further serve them in the future. While there can be an exchange of value in the beginning, there is a magnitude of value that can be created by strengthening the relationship. Premium products and offers can increase the lifetime value of your customers. They can also greatly and exponentially improve the economics of your business. This added revenue lets you create more tools to serve these customers, which also deepen the relationship engagement and increase your authority. It's a flywheel, essentially. You just need to build out the components. So be willing to make a smaller profit in the beginning, but plan for you serving your customers afterwards. If you do, then that will lead you to a bigger payout for you and value for your audience. If you're wanting to build an automated system that converts leads into paying clients, you need the blueprint. I have mapped out the entire EverFlow architecture for you. Click the link in the description area or in the pinned comment section below and download the complete 9-step EverFlow method and roadmap. The roadmap is the exact system I am using in my own business for the $10 million project. It will show you the roadmap I plan on to craft my offers and at each stage that I implement to build out my own sales processes and business growth. So go now and download the roadmap and follow along. And don't forget, please, you can subscribe to my channel. YouTube will alert you to new videos, and it will also help me expand my reach to grow the channel and impact to reach more really high striving individuals like yourself. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.